Hi everyone. Today we are going to be looking at one of the 9 components in a little bit more detail. So we are going to be looking at feedback. Now feedback is incredibly important. One of the reasons why feedback is so important is it lets you, as the sender, have some idea whether your message has been, first of all, received, and second of all, understood in the way that you wanted the message to be understood. So feedback is any type of communication that you get from the receiver that lets you know how the message is being received. So when you are talking to someone and they are just sort of staring at you blankly and not providing any information back to you about what they have understood or how they are feeling about your message, it can be very disconcerting. And the reason for that is you don't know whether you need to continue in the same manner, whether you need to change something in your communication, or even whether it's being received and understood at all. So feedback is incredibly important to effective communication. So just some notes. Obviously, the easiest communication in which to receive and to give feedback is interpersonal, that's between two people, or in a small group. So when you are talking to someone and having a conversation with someone, it's very easy to give feedback because as they're talking, you make eye contact, you nod, you can make some sort of verbal cues. Yeah, okay, wow. Your facial expression, all of those things are forms of feedback to the sender. They let the sender know how you are feeling about their message if you understand the message in the same way that they do. And it's easy to see if there's a miscommunication. So if you are paying attention to feedback, you can see if there's a miscommunication and you can immediately change course and rectify that miscommunication and lead to effective communication. So that's really the goal of acknowledging and understanding feedback. Now, feedback is difficult in public communication. With the rise of social media, and social media as a large part of public communication, that is changing a bit. And part of what's changing is that it's now much easier to provide feedback on those sort of public communications because you can add a comment, you can like, you can retweet or repost anything. Whereas if you look at traditional forms of public communication, so your billboards, flyers, print adverts, television adverts, all of those things are very difficult to give feedback on. So if you see a billboard that you don't like or you don't get, you can't just go, huh? Question mark, enter. There is really no way, unless you're going to go to a huge amount of effort to find out who you need to get hold of and send them a message. There really is no real way to give feedback. The only feedback you get is to see whether that communication had the desired outcome. So did it lead to an increase of sales, for example? Or if there's a flyer on a varsity campus, did a lot of people attend the event that was advertised? So only then do you actually realize whether the communication was effective or not. Now, when it comes to businesses, what you are really looking for there is you need to be very aware of whether feedback is indeed easy for people to give to managers, for example. So you want to make sure that communication isn't just one way. This is especially important if you're working in a large organization. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're a manager and you communicate something to your team and then sort of walk off. It might be metaphorically because you might send an email, but you want to give your team and the people working with and for you a chance to provide you some feedback. Do they understand? Do they see a better way? Are there any pitfalls that you might have missed? Do they think this is a great idea and we need to implement more ideas like this? So it's really important to make sure that you are receiving that feedback from your team. Now, as we've covered already, feedback is very important, and the whole point of feedback is it allows us to make sure that sender and receiver are understanding the message in the same way. And if they're not, you can correct it there and then. Now, one of the most important ways to get feedback is through non-verbal communication. So a lot of feedback comes from facial expressions, from body language, from gestures. So if someone is sort of looking directly at you, leaning forward, nodding, that's an indication that they are engaged. Someone has their back turned to you while you're talking to them, or is standing completely side on, not facing you, and sort of only giving you the barest indication that they're aware of you, that is telling you that they're not listening or they don't want to engage with you. So be very aware of non-verbal cues when you are communicating to someone. Also remember things like silence, response time. In presentations, questions and answers, whether there are any questions. If there are no questions, it could mean that they've understood completely, or it could mean that they are not listening, or that they're so lost they aren't even bothering to ask questions anymore. So do be aware of that. Be aware of the sort of questions that are being asked. Are these questions that indicate understandings? Are there lots of questions that are asking you to clarify things, which is feedback to you that your presentation hasn't been clear enough? Or are these the sort of questions that are follow-up questions, questions asking you to expand, in which case that indicates engagement and interest? So be aware of those things. Okay, and that is what I have for today on feedback.